Hi, everybody, and welcome again to Heal the Shadow in Your Relationships, too. And today I'm very pleased to have with me Laura Doyle. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And I'm going to tell everybody a little bit about you. So, Laura Doyle is the New York Times best-selling author of The Surrendered Single, The Surrendered Wife, and Things Will Get as Good as You Can Stand. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Her books have been translated into 16 languages and published in 27 countries. Over 150,000 women credit her with not only saving their relationships, but also showing them how to become desired, cherished, and adored. And she's the founder of Laura Doyle Connect, which is an international relationship coaching company that teaches women the intimacy skills they need to have passionate, peaceful relationships. She has appeared in so much media. Laura has been on CBS Evening News, Dateline NBC, The Today Show, Good Morning America. Oh my goodness, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Washington Post, London Telegraph. The list goes on. And she is a regular contributor for the Huffington Post. And she is now living in Newport Beach, California, with her hilarious husband, John Doyle, who apparently has been dressing himself since before she was born. So they have been married for 25 years. And that's such a cute addition to your bio there, Laura.
Thank you. It's all true.
So we are here today talking about the shadow in our relationships and how to heal it. And so let me ask you your definition and your perspective on that topic.
Yes. Well, for me, the shadow in my relationship that really had us in the ditch to where I was almost to the point of really wanting to divorce my husband and throw away, the love of my life was the control monster, which was disguised as helpful suggestions. I just thought I can help my husband improve just a little bit, right? I can help him dress better. I can help him eat healthier. I can help him be a little more ambitious at work. And of course, helpful in wife language is actually critical in husband language. So I was poking little holes in the bucket of our intimacy every day without realizing it. And what was driving all of that urge to control, because that's what it really was, that was the shadow, was fear. I was acting on my fear instead of my faith. And it just drove us completely into a ditch. And I had no idea that's what was happening, because that's how shadows are.
Yes.
We don't actually see our own shadows most of the time until the day it got revealed to me.
Yes, and that is so true. And, I've been married for 17 years, and I have been through something very similar that you're talking about. And I have a feeling this is not uncommon, actually. Women don't realize. I think it's really, and you could give me your opinion of this, but I think it's because women are constantly taught to perfect themselves. We're looking at the magazines. Can I get my makeup better? Can I figure out a new hairdo? What are my colors? All of this stuff. And so we start applying that to our men, and they start to, it starts to wear on their self-esteem because they don't have all those messages coming to them. They're taught to be themselves, make something of themselves, go out there. And I can so relate to what you're saying and why women get into that place too. And of course, we don't realize it. Like you say, it's the shadow. It's our blind spot.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. You make a great point, Neoli, because it is, can I get the makeup better? Can I get the diet better? Can I get the body better? Can I be more efficient with my time? Can I be more organized, right? We're always trying to improve ourselves.
yes.
And I think that the shadow comes in and tries to improve someone who's not us. That's where the error really is, right? I mean, we all know you can only change yourself. You can't change anyone else, right? We can all say that with great confidence that that's the truth. And yet, for some reason, when I was newly married, it just didn't occur to me that I was going against that universal rule that you can only change yourself.
Yeah, well, that's what we grow for. That's what we live for.
Yes, exactly.
So I am so curious about the title of your book, the surrendered wife. Now, most people listening to that will say, "Oh my God, is that like a modern concept? It sounds like a throwback to some other era." So you've got to explain that one for us.
Sure. Well, for me, surrendered is just a beautiful word that describes what we all have to do every day. I mean, you might be stuck in traffic and you wish the traffic would move, but you can't make it move. So you could decide, oh, I'm going to use this time to talk on the phone or listen to an audiobook or listen to music that I love or just be alone with my own thoughts. And even though it wasn't my choice, it's not what I would choose, I can be grateful for this and accept that this is my situation. And that's surrender. So a surrendered wife just recognizes that she can't change anyone besides herself, so she doesn't try. And instead, she really focuses on her own happiness. And that in turn really improves the intimacy too.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying that we can't change anybody else. So we can't change the traffic. We can't change whatever situation we find ourselves in. And since, what made you, let me ask you your background story, what made you become the surrendered wife?
Well, I was just desperate to save my own marriage, truth be told. I didn't start out as a relationship expert of any kind. But I knew that when things started to go wrong, that the problem was that he just wasn't doing the things I needed him to do, right? I knew he was the problem. It wasn't me, because I was working really hard on the relationship. I was working really hard, or so I thought, to communicate my needs and tell him what he should do differently. And he was just pretty much committed to the couch and the TV because he didn't want to. I mean, he didn't enjoy. I was actually nagging was what I was doing, and so I decided I would take him to counseling, and then the counselor would fix him, and then I could finally be happy, Neola. That was my plot.
Yes,
that was my strategy.
of
I thought it
course.
was a good one. I mean, I knew that's what you're supposed to do was go to marriage counseling, but unfortunately, the marriage counseling it didn't really help us. In fact, if anything, I felt like we got further apart. It just kind of really emphasized how far apart we were. The one thing that I did get from it was that the counselor was able to look at me and really point out that shadow side and say, Laura, I think you're controlling. And I was like, what are you talking about? I have no concept of, what do you mean? And she actually sent us on a date. I call it the no control date. She said, just as an exercise, just this once, I want you to go out with your husband. He's going to plan the date, pick the restaurant, order your food, pick the movie or the activity. Yeah.
I don't know if I could handle that.
I know. I couldn't handle it, which is the sad part. So we weren't even out of the driveway yet where I'd figured out where he was going to take me. And I was telling him how to get to the restaurant already. So it was pretty bad. And the whole night I was just on pins and needles. Like you'd think I was going for a firing squad instead of going out for a romantic night out with a man who loves me and knows me well and wants me to be happy. So it was a big eye opener for me. I remember going back to the counselor and saying, you are right. I'm controlling. Now what do I do? And she said, well, you just have to stop being so controlling. I was like, gosh, I just had no concept how to do that. It was like saying, stop thinking about elephants.
It's like telling an alcoholic, just stop drinking.
Just stop drinking or just eat less to lose weight. Like, oh, why didn't I think of that, right? So
easier said than done.
Yeah, so much easier said than done. And so there was no system or there was nothing at the time. And so it made it really difficult. So I in my desperation, I kind of felt like we got to a dead end with the counseling and I was no happier and neither was he. So I started asking women who'd been married for at least 15 years what their secret was. And they started telling me things that I didn't really understand. They didn't really make any sense to me at the time. I remember one woman said, well, I try never to criticize my husband, no matter how much it seems like he deserves it.
Ooh, yeah.
And I said, have you got anything else? Because I don't think I can do that.
I'm not going to do that one.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that one. Like that, okay, that might be good, but
wow.
Yeah, there must be something that's a little easier to do, right? So, and most of the suggestions actually sounded crazy to me because they were completely opposite of the modeling I got at home. My parents are divorced, so I had a failed recipe that I was following.
Yes.
And then also I'd had a self-study program in college on relationships. I used Glamour magazine and Cosmo as my textbooks. And so the things they were telling me were completely the opposite of everything I ever read in Glamour magazine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Because Glamour magazine wants to sell magazines, not
apparently they don't really have the right
they
information.
just gotta fill those pages.
I know. I know.
Wow. Yeah, I so understand and relate to your journey. So I'm sure there's a lot of women on this call, on viewing this today, that really can relate. So what would you say to someone who is watching today who wants to know how she can stop sabotaging her relationship and learn through some intimacy skills?
Sure, absolutely. So the first thing that I started doing differently than I had been was I called it duct tape, which is just kind of my metaphor where I just put duct tape over my mouth when I wanted to say something to my husband that was controlling or critical or demeaning or disrespectful. And by the way, gosh, I got a whole new glimpse of what it meant to be respectful. And it wasn't as horrible as I thought, too. And yet, and then it was also, there were a lot of things I'd been leaving out and still calling it respect. But the way that I was able to do that was by first focusing on my own spirit. Like I would try to just replenish my spirit. You know, I call it self-care, but it's not the kind of self-care where you get enough rest and eat healthy and go to the gym. It's the kind of self-care that I think about like a child running to a swing or a ball because of the pure joy. So I look for things that are going to bring me joy. Like I love to play volleyball on the beach. So I do that very religiously. No one looks for me on Saturday morning. They know that's where I'm going to be. And it turns out if I'm filled up and happy, it's a lot easier to deal with my husband, who does occasionally get on my nerves. Great guy though he is. He's an awesome husband. But you know, once in a while, there's going to be friction. Life is going to happen, and as long as I'm filled up and happy, it makes it so much more easy for me to take a mature approach and really kind of hear his heart message instead of maybe just the words that are coming out of his mouth. I can be thinking like, why is he saying this? Like, oh, he's trying to protect me, or oh, he's trying to do something that he thinks is going to help me, and it's coming out like a criticism or whatever, right? So sometimes. So just being in that happy mood can really help me come from that perspective.
Oh, I so totally agree with that. And I know that I talk to some of my clients who think self-care means give yourself a bubble bath and buy yourself a treat, take yourself to the movie. But really, and you said it very well, self-care is something that feeds your soul.
It is.
That,
It is.
that
And
makes you feel great.
that's right. And the bubble bath could be that thing, or the
Could
movie
be.
could
It
certainly
could
be
be.
that thing. But as long as it's making you happy, joyful, it's bringing you delight, pleasure is a big word. You know, one of the things that really became very clear to me after talking to these wise women who'd been married for at least 15 years, which seemed like, you know, eons to me at the time, was that they were actually taking a very feminine approach in their marriages. And I had no idea what that looked like. But this idea of pleasure and our own pleasure really is one that's come up as being one of the feminine gifts, I would call it, like our pleasure, our desire, our ability to magnetize men. And it can make such a difference if I have just come off the volleyball court or a bubble bath or a movie I love, and I've got that happy glow, right? That's erasing the old desperation and the I have to do everything mode that I used to live in, which was,
Yeah.
I make this face like, that's kind of
Yeah.
probably how I looked to my husband at the time when I was just complaining
Yeah.
about everything and feeling hopeless.
Well, it makes us cranky. You know, when we're stressed, we're going to be cranky.
Yeah.
And I have to say that I think this is one of the toughest things for women. We're always feeling like we got to do this, we got to do that. We have so many things to do. I don't know what it is. We give ourselves a lot of stuff to do. Maybe it's because we don't know how to say no. And we just, stop and we take such responsibility, and then we want to take care of everybody else. And we're the ones who suffer, and we're not realizing we're not being good to our families
You
because
just, yeah,
we're
that's
not
exactly
taking
right.
time for ourselves.
You just reminded me of this story from a client. This was actually many years ago, but she was a mom and a wife and she worked. And I remember her saying, I can't, because my prescription is usually to do 3 things a day to replenish your spirit. And she said, there's no way I'm going to have time for that. I'm too busy. And so I
Right.
said, okay, I understand, but let's just try to make schedule some in. So it was a weeknight, like a school night and a work night. And she announced to her family, okay, everybody, I'm going to go take a bath and I'm going to be in there for 30 minutes. So don't bother me for 30 minutes. But she went in kind of thinking like, okay, in a few minutes, I'm going to hear a little knock on the door, mommy, or the cat's paw is going to be underneath the door or whatever, right? She didn't really think she would get away with this. But 15 minutes passed, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes passed, and no one had disturbed her. And she realized she actually felt a little disappointed because it kind of proved that her family could live without her. And of course, they can't live without her, but they could for like 40 minutes. And when she got out, she realized everything was fine. Kids were doing their homework. Her husband was reading, and he had kind of stepped up into the void, right? She's usually there kind of overseeing everything. So the husband didn't need to do that. But this night, since she had taken care of herself, he kind of came up and did a little bit more. And that's one of the things that is so miraculous that we see is that our husbands actually kind of grow and blossom as we step back and maybe focus on our own self-care and our own spirits instead of trying to take care of everybody else.
Isn't that interesting? So maybe we're the ones who need to feel needed. And that's why we won't let go of some of this stuff that we feel we have to do. It's because
Exactly.
it's our own thinking about it.
It is. And I mean, I understand. I think we, as women, we like to serve, right? We want to
Yeah.
feel we're making a
Yeah.
contribution.
Yeah.
We all need to feel vital and important. So, but there's a balance, right? We can
There's
feel
a
vital and
balance.
important and take time for our own spirits too.
Well,
And
yeah,
that's
if we,
the best of all
like
possible.
you said, if we don't, we just get cranky. So,
And then you're not a good mom or a good wife or a good coworker
yes,
even, right?
absolutely. So let's talk about that area that people don't want to talk about, which is sex.
Oh yeah, my favorite topic. Love sex.
We all love
Well,
it. We just don't
yeah,
want to talk about it.
yeah. Well,
So,
this was an area that had gone missing for us. I remember telling my husband I read a study that said the average couple has sex 2.5 times per week, and I was like, we've only done it once, or we haven't done it at all, probably. And so we should have more sex. And the way I was saying it to him was so much like it was nagging, and even though it was nagging about sex, and all men want sex, it was like one more chore on his to-do list with the way I presented it. So instead of taking a feminine approach where I was using my body and my voice and my spirit to seduce him, I was absolutely making myself completely repellent. And then he wouldn't have sex with me, and then I was really hurt, and we were just stuck in this horrible cycle of that we couldn't find our way out of. So it wasn't until I learned how to take a feminine approach that the sex has really improved, and he's memorized this complicated set of instructions to make me orgasm every time. And I just,
woohoo.
it's like I feel like every woman deserves that, right? It's our birthright to be
Absolutely.
cherished and adored and have orgasms. So, and the one thing that really distinguishes a romantic relationship from every other relationship that you have is this piece, right? You might share intimately with your sister and hug your friends, but the sex is what really makes this relationship significantly different from every other relationship that we have. So if that's gone missing,
Yeah.
it's a pretty important piece to get back.
Exactly. So what, now, do you say that a woman should always have sex with her husband if she wants to? If he wants to, that is.
I do. So here's what I say. It's your body. You always get to choose. And women sometimes get really up in arms when I say, why not say yes every time? But it's still always up to us. But this was part of what you wanted when you got married, right? I mean, sometimes my clients will call and say, he wants sex all the time, all the time, so much, too much. And I'll be like, good. Because there's something really healthy going on there when that's happening in the relationship.
Absolutely.
But what I suggest is at least once a week, you want to make yourself available to your husband. And then if you really want to kick it up to the next level, if you really want to have the relationship of your dreams, then why would you pass up the part where you get to feel pleasure, you get to feel connected to him, you get to feel desired, you get to feel sexy, you connect emotionally, physically, and spiritually? Why are you saying no to that? Let's just talk about that for a little while.
Well, and let's talk about that for a little while because I think that's where the shadow comes in. What is it in us women that wants to shut down, that wants to say no to pleasure? Oh, I'm too tired. Oh, I have a headache, whatever it is. What is
That's
it?
right. Well, good point. I think most women will say, gosh, I'm just not in the mood when he approaches me. Or another big part of the shadow, I think, that comes up and interferes with this really fantastic part of being in a great relationship is that she doesn't feel sexy in that moment. So she's thinking, I haven't even showered today, or my hair is dirty, or didn't put on makeup, or whatever it is, or I've gained weight, or there's something that she's putting on herself that doesn't kind of match that he's coming after her and thinks that she's just the hottest thing on the planet. And she kind of doesn't want to step into that mindset in that moment. There was a woman on the news recently, actually, that I loved, who said that she committed to having sex with her husband every single day for a year.
Whoa.
And she said it was really a breakthrough for her to have to accept his definition of her as sexy and beautiful and attractive. And it blew her mind and really took their whole relationship somewhere it had never been before, that she absolutely loved. She was really an advocate now for always saying yes to sex.
So do you think it's because we don't feel attractive that we tend to say no? We just don't feel good about ourselves.
Exactly. It's two things. So the shadow is two parts. One is we are feeling insecure and we're making that more important than our husband's desire for us. But the other piece, I think, is this whole, gosh, I'm not in the mood thing, as though we won't get into the mood if we don't start doing it. So it'll be interesting. Like I'll have women who are willing to do the dishes every day to keep an orderly house, even though you don't usually feel like you're in the mood to do the dishes, in my experience. But but it's a way of making an intimate marriage a priority, is to be willing to have sex every day, or as much as he wants, or at least once a week. At the low end of the scale for me would be at least once a week.
That is such a good point. That how do you know you're not going to get into the mood? Because I experienced that, of course, and I experienced it with my husband around dinner time and meal time. Sometimes it'll be like, well, it's time to have dinner, but I'm not sure I'm hungry yet. And then it's like, well, let's just start preparing it. And then you start smelling the food and then you get hungry. And so
you do.
It's just
That's a great metaphor. I love that, Neola. That's perfect. Yeah.
So tell me about the surrendering part that you were talking about before. Are there some men that women really should not surrender to?
Oh, you bring up such a great point, because I'm a huge advocate for marriage, and I think there's a lot of unnecessary divorce, and I suffered so much. I want to make sure that nobody else suffers from just not having the right training, right?
Yes.
Relationships 101 in school, like none of us did.
Don't we wish? Don't we wish?
Right. There are these three kinds of guys that really you're just not safe with, and safety has to come first. So it's really easy. It's a man who's actively addicted to either alcohol, drugs, or gambling, or a man who's physically abusive, or one who is not capable of being faithful to you. So the good news is, if your guy is not one of those three, you have a good guy. Not a perfect man, but one that you really can have a wonderful relationship with.
Well, they may not be perfect men. We're not perfect women either. What are we going to do?
I know. Now you tell me. I was the perfect wife.
Well, this is the reason that I think we have intimate relationships. It's the only arena that we can bring out the shadow. It's a safe enough arena where this person's not going anywhere. We're committed to each other. So all of that old stuff can come up and you can look at it and, thank God you saved your marriage. And thank God I saved my marriage. We were close to divorce a few times ourselves. And, I got to commend my husband. He's so willing to do the work. I had a first husband who did not acknowledge therapy, did not acknowledge that he had any kind of problem. And that's tough. I would put that as one of the guys you should not surrender to, because he doesn't want to take responsibility for his part of it,
Yeah, you know what's been really interesting though, Neoli, is what we found. One of the crazy things about surrendering that I can't really even explain is that I will recommend often to women when they start doing the training or reading the book, even that they not discuss it with their husbands, that they just kind of give themselves some privacy and some space to do it. And a lot of times, what I hear from them is in about 2 weeks, they'll say, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I have a new husband, or I feel like I have a new boyfriend." And of course, he's not the one who changed, right?
Right.
She is.
Yeah.
And then he responded to her completely different. So we have this situation a lot where women will say, "Oh, he won't go to therapy," or "I tried to get him and he won't go." And I'm always like, "Great, that's just as well." Because a lot of the couples that, or a lot of, we don't coach couples and we don't coach men. We only coach women because we can really see that they are the keepers of the relationship and they have all this power. I get a lot of clients who have been in marriage counseling for a year and now they've just separated, or now there's an affair, and we take them back from the brink there, not just saving the relationship, but making it so that the woman feels desired and cherished and adored every single day, and nobody wants to get divorced from that. So it's amazing how much you can get done just on the wife side.
It's a dynamic. What we put into it, the energy we put in, they respond to, and how they are, we respond to. So yeah, you have to look at your part of it. Now,
Yes,
you,
exactly.
yeah. So you also wrote the book Surrendered Single, and we do have quite a few singles who are viewing this too. So I wonder what you would have to say to them about being a surrendered single.
Yes. Well, and so the interesting thing is the intimacy skills are the intimacy skills, whether you're single, whether you're married, whether you're in a committed relationship. And since we, as wives, we always want to be dating our husbands, right? You always still want to keep that spark alive that you had when you first got together.
Yeah.
One of the things that I suggest to my singles is I have a whole series of standard operating procedures for first dates. And I actually have a lot of women sort of date their husbands back into their lives by using these operating procedures, they're really simple. Like one of them is to be quiet during a first date. And the point of that is for her to be able to really stay focused on herself. Like, how do I feel and what do I want? Because the shadow side will sometimes come up and do what I used to do on dates, which is I'm kind of a good talker. I love to talk. And sometimes on a date, I'd be nervous. I would talk a lot more even. And then I just become like a motor mouth and I'm trying to impress him. And that's honestly not very attractive. But a good listener is an excellent conversationalist. That's very attractive. I've had one man say, "Well, yeah, if you let a man talk about himself all night, he's going to be halfway in love with you right there." So, and that's part of the posture that you take on a first date is, okay, I'm going to let him audition for the part of my boyfriend because, and I also encourage my singles to only take a receptive role to dating. Like that, I think in order to ask a man on a date, you have to kind of take your beautiful tail feathers and put them down, and then take this inordinate risk of rejection by asking him out. So we don't do that. So if he's already asked you out on the date, you've already made the cut. So now he's in the role. It's sort of like a Broadway director would audition dancers. You can audition the man for the part of your boyfriend that way. Very empowering and much more fun. You can be the goddess of fun and light on your dates instead of, feeling all this pressure, like you've got to see if this relationship is going to work out and you've got to impress him.
Yes, well, that's a very empowered way of going about it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm dying to ask you to explain that title. Things will get as good as you can stand.
Yes, yes.
I love that.
As women, it turns out I was so gratified to learn that we are not just smaller, less hairy men, but we are women with our own set of gifts that we bring to our relationships, that we bring to the world. And I think when I was coming through school, kind of around the turn of the millennium, long ago, there was all this emphasis on like men and women are the same. And you have to really be successful at work and in your education, you have to really emphasize that. And the piece that I never got was that I had these special gifts. So it was just so enlightening to find out about that. And one of them, the essence of femininity, in fact, if you want to like 10x your level of attraction to a man, this is how you do it. And that is to become more receptive. So if a man, if anyone actually says, oh, your hair looks beautiful, what you don't want to do is say, oh, no, I haven't washed it today.
Right.
You want to just do what your mother told you and say, thank you, and smile. If someone offers to stay after the party and help you clean up, and you say, oh, that's okay, I've got it, right? Not receptive. If somebody offers to buy your coffee or your lunch, a friend wants to take you to lunch even, or like we find that like your husband will want to take you out on a date. They'll say, let's go out to dinner. And you might have an agenda that we should stay home and save money, or I've got groceries that are going to go bad. And you go, oh, no, that's fine. We'll just stay home. Well, you just rejected his invitation to take you on a date. And so we unwittingly do these things thinking that we're being practical, and we are. We're being more efficient, and we are. But unfortunately, the intimacy goes missing in those situations, which is quite a sacrifice for efficiency and practicality.
Right.
And part of what makes our marriages and relationships so exciting is this, like this impulse, this spontaneity, or, just being, my husband and I were at breakfast recently, and I was just we were at a cafe, and I was just sitting there kind of looking at the scene, and he goes, don't move. And I'm like, okay. And he gets out his phone and starts taking my picture. And then he hands me the phone, and I'm looking at, there's my picture, my picture, my picture, my picture. Like he's just taking all these lovely pictures of me. And it wasn't like that before.
Yeah.
This is how it is now, post intimacy skills.
Yes.
And I just feel like things have gotten so good because I've sort of stood in that discomfort, stood with the shadow, wanted to say no, that's okay, and reject, and just let myself be vulnerable, and said yes, thank you, and smiled.
Yes. So it's all about receptivity, and that kind of goes along with your, the thing you say about being surrendered. Surrender
Yeah.
to what's going on. Go with it. Go with the flow. If he wants sex, hey, it's a great time to have sex. If he wants to say yes, hey, I love taking it in. How else can we receive a great life that we're longing for? It's not going to be by getting it, right? That's the
No.
masculine approach.
That's the masculine approach, right? And the feminine approach is just all about magnetizing, right? You are a magnet, so you can draw things to you. I always say women can move mountains without moving a muscle if they know about their feminine gifts. So a great example of this, I remember Kat Deely is the host of So You Think You Can Dance, and she came on the show one time looking gorgeous as always, and she'd been nominated for an Emmy. And so the judges were saying, oh, Kat, congratulations on your Emmy nomination. And she just smiled and glowed and said, thank you. And they said, oh, and you look beautiful, you look gorgeous. And she just smiled and said, thank you. And she kind of took it. You could see she was sort of taking it in. She wasn't just saying, thank you, and rushing through.
Right.
She was really sort of basking in that moment. And now the judges had also been nominated for Emmys. She could have easily said, oh, and congratulations to you on your Emmy. But she didn't. She just let it land. And I think it's part of what makes her so beautiful, so confident, and so successful is that she has this beautiful feminine ability to receive. I'll tell you another quick story. I had a client who had been married for 30 years. And just before she got married, her husband got her, for Valentine's Day, got her some like heart-shaped soaps and like a washcloth. And she received it and she was kind of like, not my favorite gift, right? Like, okay, why'd you get me this?
Yeah.
And he had not gotten her anything since for 30 years. And so when she came into the work and started learning about receptivity, she goes, Laura, I don't know what I'm going to do. He hasn't got me anything. There's nothing to receive. He doesn't give me things anymore. But through the practices that we have of the gracious art of receiving femininely, she did, the next holiday was Christmas. And he got her a beautiful, expensive, name brand, exotic sweater.
Wow.
And she was just thrilled. She said, I've owned it for 5 days. I've worn it for 3. I think my husband can tell that I'm delighted to have it. So I feel like we're back, this beautiful cycle of him giving and me receiving. It's all back.
Yeah, it is totally a beautiful thing. So, Laura, everything you say makes so much sense, and I love hearing it. And it's been such a delight to have you. And I understand you have a free gift for our viewers
I
called
do. I
Rate,
do. I'm
Rate
so
Your
excited to give it to
Intimacy.
you.
Yeah, tell us
So,
about it.
well, the first step I feel like with the learning the intimacy skills is kind of finding out where you are, because some of us had good modeling and some of us didn't, and some of us are just naturally good at some of them. So I have a free quiz. It's called intimacyskillsquiz.com. So you go there and you can take it, and it'll add it all up for you. It just takes a minute, and it'll really let you know where you stand and the areas that you could improve in order to have more intimacy and passion and more peace in your relationship. And then, in addition to that, I also like to send everybody the first chapter of my international best-selling, movement-starting phenomenon book, The Surrendered Wife, and also The Surrendered Single, because we always want to be dating our husbands, and it's great for the singles to read the wives to kind of see what's coming.
Sure.
So I'd like to give everyone the quiz and
Aw.
the first chapters of both books.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we have the links right here below the video. And again, Laura, it's been just such a pleasure to have you here with us to be a part of this series. And I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neoli. It's just been such a pleasure. Thanks again for having me.
Our pleasure. And goodbye to everybody till the next installment of Heal the Shadow in Your Relationships 2.